I'm Marg, this is Andrew, and we've been working on a new partnership for the past year or so with a nonprofit organization in East Harlem called Youth Action, YouthBuild. And I'm kind of excited about it because this year has been a lot of progress in terms of like the size of our installs. We finished this big install here at Grand Street where we have 3 towers and everyone fibered up. And now we have projects in the Bronx, we have projects in Upper West Side, we have projects in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Park Slope, Brooklyn, where we're moving into whole building installs. And it's becoming clear that as an organization that's been very successful historically within volunteer-driven workforce, to scale to cover more and more of New York City, we're going to have to make some strategic decisions. And one thing that I've been working on in my concentrating on outreach and community partnerships is that if we can build our volunteer corps, or at least our skilled worker population in each neighborhood where we have a presence, then this is much more replicable and scalable. So Youth Action, YouthBuild contacted us last year when they were applying for funding for their next-gen digital workforce training program. And Youth Action has a bunch of different, you can go to the next slide, a bunch of different courses that they offer. So it's basically for young people in Harlem, ages 17 to 24. They have, I know them from construction, so they getting kids ready for high-paying skilled trades jobs. They also do food service, building operations, like the engineers and supers of buildings. And now they have this course called the Next Gen Digital Workforce. And they wanted a letter of support from New York City Mesh to get funding for that course. And one of their instructors, who teaches at Bronx Community College, I believe, Edwin Reed Sanchez, and has a lot of experience with wireless installations in poorly served areas. He presented a few months ago. He was a volunteer with NYC Mesh and knew about us, and so hooked us up, and that there started our partnership. So from a letter of support for their funding, once they got the funding for their class and they were kicking off their first cohort of students, I think in May, this year, they asked us to help instruct those students in how Mesh is done. And the other nice thing about YAYB is that they own properties that house low-income people in East Harlem, which is also an area where we don't have a great presence. So this is a perfect match where we could get access to some rooftops, teach some young people how this is done, give them some real-world experience with, a lot of our volunteers are professional network and software people. So there's a mentoring aspect there and a networking aspect, like a people networking aspect. And here's a photo of one of the couple of classes that we held here in Grand Street to get the students ready, familiar with what Mesh does and what an install would be like. It started off with us inviting their class to come here to this meeting and to have a tour of this facility and how the fiber infrastructure has been installed. And also, we're learning about them too, this whole concept that these students, when they graduate from the Next Gen program, are going to have certain networking certifications that will help them, find employment, but they'll also have real hands-on experience configuring nodes and connecting them, troubleshooting them. And the result will be some local infrastructure that's built in East Harlem, and hopefully will also involve the students of Youth Action, YouthBuild in general to recruit and outreach to the residents. And so it's a win-win. And there's more funding down the pike. So here's our local partnership. We want to build community. So we're not just, sitting here in this room and talking about where we're going to install nodes. We want to involve the communities where we're building so that they're also in, so to speak, in this room with us, and maybe having their own rooms in each neighborhood. So, if the Bronx seems very far from here, there'll be a crew of knowledgeable mesh people in the Bronx, and we're all connected on Slack, and we'll communicate and support, just as we have with Belmont Cove, with Olmsted, all these big projects that we're doing where volunteers are stepping up to run the work and getting support and feedback from the community. We want to support local workforce development, which is a great thing to be supporting. The outcome will be that people in that underserved area will have experience with internet connection, get some digital literacy. And also we want to train those people, in each community, make partnerships with nonprofits who are well established in the communities to groom more volunteers to support and install, so we can keep on supporting expanding. And then the last thing is I want to be able to document this work so that we can just start it up in another neighborhood as we go along. So I will pass this to Andrew, who is the volunteer who stood up to say, that he would sort of coordinate the work with the next gen students.
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Andrew. I live in Harlem, and this seems like a great opportunity to help expand coverage in an area where we don't have very much. In addition to hooking up the residents of these buildings, but then also building capacity in the neighborhood. So you can see East Harlem is an area. I think there's some history here where we had a node or two, and it sort of peters out. This is, I'm really hoping, an opportunity to get something that stays and can grow and sort of self-sustain. So yeah, like Marg said, they have like 12 properties, I think, here, scattered throughout this area between 3rd and 1st Ave. And the line of sights are a little tricky. So I went and sort of scoped this out. This is the plan that we came up with. Was we've got a Link NYC kiosk on one side over here, and then that also happens to be the headquarters of YAYB, where they have a Spectrum connection. And so between these two sources, we can get a VPN back to the rest of the mesh, or a reliable pair of VPNs back to the mesh, right? And then we can then go and distribute it throughout the neighborhood, right? So this is the plan for how we're going to cover every single building in their portfolio and beyond into the rest of the neighborhood. And you can see we got up on some rooftops and we started working on this. So we've got, putting in some cables, assembling a non-penetrating mast, having a pizza break, right? And so this is what we've built so far. So we got the students out and we put up a node on the rooftop of the headquarters with an SXT to the kiosk on 3rd Ave. And then we were able to set up a light beam point-to-point and beam it across to this other building, which is very central. We're calling it's node number 641. And then that will allow us to reach the remaining buildings. And then 2 weeks ago, I think, we stood up this sort of first client of 641. And that, in turn, because there's sort of a building in the way here, right, that now means that we are one hop away from every single building in the whole system now, which is cool because that means if anyone in their whole setup wants to get signed up, we can get them set up without having to visit another address. And you can see sort of a little example of this here. I think this is what's so cool about the mesh, right, is we have this connection. You can barely see it in the tree, but there's a Link NYC kiosk over there. And we were able to set up an SXT in the right spot to see it, and then, sort of run a cable over, beam it over from a different spot, which has line of sight to the next building up, right? And then build the point-to-point, chain it together with the Omnis, and finally make it to, hopefully, right, we'll be able to plug someone who lives in one of these apartments over here, and they'll be able to use this whole chain. Something that's come up as we talk about this with the folks is that the residents who live here are extremely hard on their luck, maybe it's a way to say it. And our standard install fee is likely a pretty significant burden. Some of these folks are paying less than that in monthly rent. And 1 in 3 of them from the sort of neighborhood statistics don't have any household internet connection, right? So when we're normally talking about the value proposition for most of the people that we do installs for, we're saying, oh, you'll make it back on your Spectrum connection within a couple of months, right? These folks don't have a Spectrum connection, right? And so this is sort of a bit of an obstacle that we are looking to try to get around. And one way that we can try to do that is that the YYB organization as Marg mentioned, right, is interacting with us because they want us to train these students, right? So they're in this position where they are training students, but they are also like the landlord of these folks. And so they, are going to give us money to train the students, right? But of course, we don't run a training business, right? And so what we would really love to do is get these folks hooked up. And so my proposal is that we can use that money to cover the install fees for these residents, right? But then the question becomes like, how many people should we connect for that amount of money, right? And we, simple math here, right? Like we could do 16 units at full price, 36 units at our standard subsidy price. There's, 120. I think I made an estimate here, it was 180, so it's 120 in the whole area. And so if we collected our standard install fee, that gets us $50,000, right? And so like, obviously they're not offering us $50,000, but the cost to actually connect everything, like when I scoped it out, like all the hardware and stuff, because again, we're not paying for labor here, right? Like we're training the volunteers are training students. So there's sort of no change of money there. It only costs about $10,000 in total. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, depending on if we get full 100% subscription, but it's somewhere around there. And so to say, no, you must pay us $50,000 to get these low-income buildings hooked up when it's only going to cost us 10, like that just doesn't feel right, And so we want to be financially responsible. We don't want to be pouring, hard-earned member donations down the drain. But these people are in need, and I think it's our job to help them. I also will point out here that even if we're technically on paper taking a loss here, YYB is likely to be a strategic partner in the area, in the city going forward. And so I think this is definitely an area that is worth investing. So my proposal right now is to say, let's just round that 36 up from the subsidy rate to a sort of even 40 and say, we'll do 40 installs for this price. And when we get to 40, hopefully we have a thriving partnership and we have just given them 300 plus hours of student training time for that price, right? And they will be very happy to continue to invest in us, right? If we have to pursue grant money to make that happen or something, I think that's the kind of thing we can figure out. But I just wanted to signal that before I start hooking up people for, without collecting the fee, right? There's sort of another arrangement and process here. And yeah, I'm happy to talk afterwards or if anybody has any questions about this. But yeah, I think this leads nicely into Marg also wants to talk about some other areas in which money can be involved here.
The interesting thing about this area, the East Harlem, Upper Manhattan, and the Bronx are on the New York City map of internet need. 2/3 of the people are needing affordable internet, and only a third of the people have internet, right? So there are a lot of funding streams out there. Are they attainable by us in our current, state of organization? Maybe. We're working on some. One of them that's coming down the pike is a lot of federal money, the NTIA, National Telecommunications Infrastructure, maybe. Lots of federal money, millions and millions of dollars. And there's also funding that has been received from the federal government by New York State that's being doled out under something called New York State Connect All. And there's different ways that they're doling out that money, some that we don't do. We don't dig up, trenches to lay fiber down highways, and we're not even going to dig trenches in New York City, right? But another funding stream is called AHCP, the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program. And not sure if we're a great fit for it. I think they want us to be a good fit for it. It's basically a portfolio currently of, 100 properties, maybe 50 properties in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan that have expressed interest in getting subsidized to connect their residents. And then we are provisionally accepted to be in this program to be a provider of internet to these residents. But the way the program is designed is that you have to take that entire portfolio and bid on the entire portfolio. And it's not really, as an organization that grows organically, it's not really something that we know how to do yet or have possibly the capacity to do. But New York State Connect All also sees that an organization like ours may have some difficulties scaling up to qualify for some of these funds. So at the end of the month, we'll find out if they want to invest any money $100,000 in helping us build capacity to get these grants, in which case we'll be able to hire possibly a grant writer and a program manager, a project manager. So let's say we did get that $100,000 and we could identify quickly someone who would spend full time for a year doing these tasks that we need to be done, that possibly could open up some of these federal funds. So I guess going back to Andrew's point, if we're helping people who are in need and, have no spectrum bill to offset, with their mesh donations, I think there could possibly be streams of funding to fill in the holes, like to maybe retroactively support this project or support after the first 40 installs, right? The other promising partnership that we have coming up is that New York Presbyterian, the Columbia University Hospital, owns a lot of properties, and we just had a meeting with them recently where they're interested in possibly allowing us to put antennas on top of the highest building in Upper Manhattan, which is the Health Sciences building, Hammer Health Sciences. So not only is that exciting because it can see everything, but whether they give us backhaul or not, it will be a place to bounce our signals off of to connect our mesh together up there. And even more exciting, I think, is the fact that Columbia is a big landlord, I think second to the Catholic Church, right? So there isn't a possibility that we may be able to get access to many of their buildings that they have in Queens and Brooklyn as well as the Bronx. And I also was having a conversation with the people here at Grand Street Guild. Grand Street Guild owns properties in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, right? So I guess the whole idea of let's spend some time documenting and pondering what we're doing here in Grand Street Guild here. What are we doing right? What will we do differently? How can we explain this to the next Grand Street building? What needs to be done? And also, I think, at least from my point of view, I think it would behoove us to spend a lot of time thinking of, now that we know how to do it, how do we explain to others how they should do it so that we can remove ourselves from the risk equation a little bit more. We are really good at doing the technical stuff. I mean, we still struggle, right? But we have got that down pretty much to a science. Like this year, we've done 3 gigantic building projects and pretty much without a hitch so far, right? But where we lack resources is outreaching to the community to support. So every person having a range issue with Wi-Fi in their apartment is coming through us, the regular, volunteers who may or may not be able to visit. But maybe there's young people in the area who want to learn how to tinker, who want to support their neighbors. Maybe there's organizations that have access to those young people, so we don't even have to find the young people. We just have to find the organizations. So, really want to spend some time this year looking for more opportunities for partnerships. So Columbia Presbyterian, Grand Street Guild, any other neighborhood, YAYB, of course, any other neighborhood organizations that have their finger on the pulse of the neighborhoods, who we can teach, whose volunteers we can teach so that they can carry forth and do much more. So, this is part of the other presentation. One of the contacts that we got through YAYB was with Taino Towers, which is a kind of like a similar development to here, very tall buildings in East Harlem. They're also part of the AHCP program. I don't know if they've gone forth and actually hired somebody yet to do their internet, but partnerships like this, maybe we can work something out where they can help us move our signal around. So if anybody wants to help out with these types of endeavors, this map.
Yeah, it's just showing you how good Taino Towers is.
I like it.
It's a good roof.
It's very good. Yeah, very, very nice. Anyone wants to help out, we always can use people to help install and design network stuff. I think we could always also do a better job harnessing people who know graphic design, people who know outreach, people who know grant writing, community relations, that kind of thing. So join us on Flat. Yeah, project management, right? And Andrew, John, other people in this room have good experience standing up a new building. So if you want to take that on too, it could be fulfilling and it's needed. So any questions for us?
So, excuse my ignorance here. So, as far as like the install goes, so you've already set up all of that equipment, right, in those buildings, and so the install part now, the thing that the renters would pay for is just running Ethernet down, and then do they get a router or something for their?
Yeah, so I'll clarify. The things we've set up are the red dots and the blue links. The gray dots and the gray links are planned.
Okay.
So we're sort of part of the way through.
Okay.
Less than half. Right. And then I'll clarify a little bit about our normal sort of financial structure. Is usually the mesh pays for hubs outright ourselves. Right. So when we stand up a neighborhood hub, we pay for the equipment that's there. And then when at the time of a connection, each apartment pays us a fee. Right. And so I put this through the approval process for a hub, and we have 3 hubs here basically, right? And the idea is that then that hub gets paid for by the installs of the neighborhood, right? But in this case, right, asking for a little bit of a different process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just to add to that, right? So a standard install, if it's a building we don't have any equipment on, we pretty much break even, or even come in just a little bit in the red, and then some people donate and we're fine. If there's already like equipment on the roofs, then yeah, it is mostly just a wire and a router, but just a little bit extra.
Yeah, I'm curious for, like, let's say, for example, YAYB 641 there. Do you have a unit connected yet, or is it just a rooftop? And does that mean there's a PoE injector in someone's house or a common space, or that's kind of the first part of the question?
Yeah, so here it is in the office, because this is the office, right? And so that we're pulling power there. There's like a shelf in one of the rooms that we put up. Here we put up a shelf in the basement. We found it out with the super let us in sort of made it work. And then here it is, they actually have an office in this building as well. So sort of like that's what we're going with right now, with the idea being that, we basically can't expand. We've hit the limits of their administrative space, basically. We can't expand further than this without continuing to do things like basements. And so really it is time to do apartments.
Right, roger that. And then is there like who's doing outreach or publicizing this to the people who live in these buildings?
Yeah, so they have staff, fortunately, and so we're working with one of the trainers to try to coordinate on that, but it is a gap. It's not really in his job description to do this sort of outreach, and so we're trying to figure that out. Yep.
One of the ideas that was bandied about, but we need to come up with a plan to implement it, is that these YAYB students, even the ones who are not the network technician class, are supposed to do X number of hours of community involvement and social capital. So doing outreach to neighbors and, educating them on the benefits of a network connection and how to access it could be in that purview. We just have to have a meeting and design that. So, but that would be an awesome thing to be able to offer to other neighborhoods as well.
You might not know this, but how much is YAYB paying for internet as it is? Because I'm assuming. Oh, okay.
I mean, they have a FiOS connection, so we know about what that costs. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming that if we get any of these other contracts and we're able to do a direct connection, that we could offer to take their internet bill effectively as just that kind of, okay, we know your funding is great, but let's work together on this and reduce your costs elsewhere.
I do anticipate that in the future, as we grow, and if we get a separate backhaul here, that yes, we could offer the folks at the YYB office to switch their network over to use us, and maybe there's an opportunity for the students to learn something there in terms of switching their network over and doing some of that.
Okay.
But I don't see that as particularly relevant to the financial terms, just because of the timescales and because it's different money basically.
So for the setup here, is the internet going through the link New York City as well as the current Comcast connection that they have?
Yep. So we've set up a redundant VPN. So there's one VPN over the Link NYC kiosk, and there's also one, like there's a cable that goes downstairs to, it just plugs into their LAN. Yep.
Okay.
And we do a VPN over both of those.
Okay, cool. And then for any of the buildings that aren't connected so far, those would be part of like the install fee, like, or are they?
Yeah. So the idea is if we got someone in one of these buildings that wanted to get signed up, right? Because like there's an outreach step here, we have to get an apartment interested. That then we would stand up and we'd put basically a standard install with an Omni and a light beam on their roof. You hardly even need the light beam at this distance. Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, one more.
Anyone?
Thank you very much.